Hello, I'm Clarence Mitchell. I'm the EY Global Technology, Media, and Telecom Strategy Lead. And we're here today at Barcelona for the Mobile World Congress. It is the largest gathering of mobile executives in the world today. We've brought this group together so that we can address how we see sort of the upside of digital disruption and operationalize industry convergence and create the future of work. To help create a range of perspectives for us today, we've got a couple of guests on our panel that I'd like to introduce. First, we've got Carolyn Desmonfray, who is the EY Global Industry Convergence and Disruption Leader. We've also got Lawrence Buchanan, who is the EY Media Digital Leader. And we've got Greg Cudahy, who is the EY Global Media Technology and Telecom Leader. So why don't we go ahead and get started? So Carolyn, I'm going to start with you. Right, so one of the things that we've been talking about here in the Mobile World Congress is the role of disruption clearly across all of the TMT companies. But it's not just TMT companies. You find companies across industry are starting to think about how they invest in innovation and disruption. Where do you think the innovation is going to happen when it happens outside of technology, media, and telecom?
That's right, Clarence. So I think, if you walk the floors at Mobile World Congress this week, what you see is different opportunities to transform customers' lives. And what we're seeing is tech and connectivity being applied to real problems and really impacting industries that are fundamentally different from what has been happening before. So a great example of that is health and well-being. We're seeing ecosystems gravitating around this market. We're seeing augmented reality, virtual realities, smart fridges, smart homes, and all sorts of new technologies getting connected to enhance the health experience. And by doing that, we're seeing 6, 7, 8 different industries converging into that space. That's just one example. The other example, I think, is around retail and consumer products. We've got so many different innovations here connecting, enabled by 5G, where we see amazing opportunities for the future of shopping. We see opportunities for the concept of lifestyle as a service, where so much of what we do today, so much of what we purchase today is going to be automated, it's going to be invisible, it's going to be easy. And the ecosystems that play in the background to create these new possibilities, that's just mind-blowing.
Fantastic. So you see retail as a big opportunity for increased innovation, and you see healthcare as a magnet for other industries to come together.
That's right. And the other big theme here is really smart cities. I think we're seeing a lot of innovation in the smart city space. And then zooming within smart cities, we see a lot around smart neighborhoods and smart buildings, but also the energy infrastructure that underpins all of this. So I think these are really exciting times.
Fantastic. So, Greg, you heard Carolyn talk a bit about where she sees the innovation coming from outside TMT. What's your perspective from within TMT?
So I think it's a really interesting time. I actually think one of the things that just blew me away when we first started this week in Barcelona was Dr. Kim of the World Bank talking about the importance of 5G. I mean, you sit there and go, why is the head of the World Bank talking about 5th generation wireless technology? And I think we focus on the business aspects of it, which are about serving the consumers. But I think what really isn't understood is Dr. Kim's perspective about how much of a social importance this technology has today. And really the 3.5 billion people who are not connected to the global community electronically today, really getting to them. That's one of the things that I looked at, and we'd heard from our panelists that we had today about how much tech, media, and telco are all coming together, and the lines are really blurring about who provides that. And so I thought that was really important. But within the industry, I think the other thing that's a little bit of an elephant in the room is the role of the regulators. At the stated level, the EU is very much, let's have government regulate who has access. Whereas the Americas, especially the US, is let's let the market set that. I think the encouraging thing is when we heard from the regulators, their intended outcome is about the same, which is more access, more fairness for all. But the real question for the whole TMT industry is how do we help make that hybrid model between the market and the government work fast enough to make sure that we're bringing this very necessary good to the people who will increasingly be dependent upon it.
So you see that even when the innovation takes place within TMT, it has impacts far beyond that in terms of social fabric, in terms of interaction with the regulators and things of that.
Yeah, I think many of us appreciate that at the conceptual level, but until Dr. Kim actually put out real world examples of things. He even said that this is something that could drive wars in other regions if you don't get people connected to be part of the global community. It just really, really emphasized it for me that we've got a big challenge here, and it's not just about how to make something cheaper, it's about how to make a society better.
And then Lawrence, from your perspective, any alternative view when it comes to thinking about it from a digital perspective?
Yeah, I tend to try and distinguish between the pre and the post-disrupted industry sectors. If you come to a TMT conference, these companies have lived and breathed disruption for the last 10 years.
Sure.
The media industry had the core product digitized, the distribution model digitized, the value chain rewritten from top to bottom. That has not yet happened in many other industries. You think about healthcare, life sciences, automotive, insurance, aviation, agriculture, education. We've barely begun.
Right.
I think what is really fascinating, exciting at the moment is just how much change there will be in the next decade. And to some extent, this explosion of technology, AI and IoT and genomics, it's barely begun. We're at 2 to 3% connectivity. How many percentage of the population have had their genome sequenced? It's probably 0.00001%.
Right.
How many people have a 3D printer in their home, make real use of AI in their daily lives? Now when those things come together, when autonomous vehicles quite literally take off, then we start to see the fundamental rewriting of the value chain in all of those sectors that have so far been immune from disruption.
Fantastic. Well, a key theme for us here at EY at the Mobile World Congress was about the upside of disruption, and your description just lays out that there is so much more upside still to be realized.
Yeah, I think for most companies, particularly in those, let's say, pre-disrupted industries, I think it's a really important inflection point, because on one side, this could represent an existential crisis. At the current rate of churn, 75% of the Fortune 500 will be new startups by 2027.
Right.
So many companies will not respond effectively and fast enough. And in fact, a lot of the budgets going into digital transformation are simply digitizing the front end of yesterday's business. At the same time, you could argue that this is a once in a generation opportunity to completely reinvent a company to be fit for purpose in a digital world. The business model, the value chain, it's a huge opportunity there.
Great. Well, one of the recurring themes that we've seen over the last couple of years here at Mobile World Congress, and it's been really reinforced this time around as well, is this idea of collaboration, the idea of bringing together companies to accomplish something, often in the form of an ecosystem. So I guess the question for this group is, given the importance of that kind of engagement, what are the things that really matter to help create a successful ecosystem, and what kind of capabilities need to be in place to make that work?
Yeah, it's an interesting dichotomy, because so many of these organizations we see at Mobile World Congress are engineering-led organizations, and that means they sell product, right? And they're all moving, as Lawrence said, they've disrupted themselves in many cases, and we're moving into an ecosystem that has to provide people with solutions. The ideal AI environment, you don't know the AI is there. It's actually improving itself off of its interactions with you, whether that be through a keyboard, whether that be through voice, whatever. And that means there's a fundamental cultural shift in many of these organizations. Many companies are used to controlling a silo from, raw material supplier to manufacturer to customer to consumer, and it's very tight. And that model clearly does not work. If you're going to be a company trying to control, you're going to fail going forward. You've got to actually be able to generate sufficient value to people valuing you and wanting you to be part of their ecosystem. You can't control things in this. And I think that also brings up a real question of, there's collaboration, but there's also who leads. Who's calling the charge? And again, going back to Dr. Kim, when Kennedy said in, I think it was 1960, 61, that we're going to put a person on the moon within a decade, it was a giant effort towards a collective good. And we don't have anybody calling towards this collective good. So there's going to have to be collaboration, but who's going to really step up and say, we have to have someone take a leadership position to put a big ambitious goal out there? So I think that's the dichotomy, is collaborate, yes, but who's actually going to lead towards this bigger I won't say it's quite nirvana, it's not that at all, it's not going to be that at all, but it's going to be use case specific. How are we going to get there fast enough?
So Greg, interesting. You see the key elements here as being things around culture and leadership, not so much around technology and process.
Yeah, I actually think if you go through here, there's so much technology here that, we'll be lucky if half of it's applied in the next 5 years, right? The technology or the management theory is rarely the limitation. The limitation is people. It's their ability to quite frankly, harmonize. All of the companies you talked about, even the startups, they're global players within a few years of starting up. And for the regulators to keep up there and allow that innovation to flourish, but also to make sure it's monetized so people get a return on the money spent on 5th generation wireless or spent on autonomous networks, things like that. That's going to be a difficult thing, is who actually ends up paying.
Carolyn, your perspective on
Absolutely.
ecosystems?
Absolutely echo that. And another question is around, what data is going to flow within those ecosystems. Where is that data coming from, and how is it connecting, and how are we turning that data into something meaningful, and who owns that and who monetizes that? So that's the first layer. We mustn't forget that there is always a customer at the heart of these ecosystems. And actually, this isn't a supply side model anymore. This is really a chance to Lauren's point. This is truly transformative. So if we look at big issues like how we work, how we stay healthy, how we live, how we move, these are really the areas where we're going to see the technology applied to solving a problem or providing a benefit. And these ecosystems will gravitate around customers. And those customers are industry agnostic. This is all underpinned by technology, but ultimately customers do not care anymore which industry they're buying from. And it's probably been the case for quite some time, but before it didn't really matter because customers did not have the power to create, transform, or destroy an ecosystem at the click of a button, and neither do.
So your point is that it's important to always remember the purpose of the ecosystem. At the end of the day, it's to solve a problem, and it's designed around a customer, whoever that's going to be.
And that customer wants it to be easy.
Right.
They don't want to access 15 different things to solve 15 different problems. So that integration, that interoperability, that ease of access, the speed at which it needs to be made possible, I think that's really going to be a big question for many businesses out there.
Right. And Lawrence, from a digital perspective, again, are there different things to think about in terms of making the ecosystem successful?
I completely agree. Firstly, you need to anchor all of your investments, ecosystems around your purpose, around the wants and needs of your customers. So completely agree with that point. I think it's almost inconceivable that any company, even the tech companies, can keep up with the pace of change that we're seeing right now. A new technology can hit 50 million users in 18 days. And therefore having an ecosystem, having a culture of open innovation, where we can collaborate, partner, joint venture with tech startups, with large companies, with small companies, I think is an essential capability. Where I see challenge is I see a lot of companies who have run successful pilots, experiments, collaborations with startups, and they get to a 90-day MVP. They test a brand new disruptive offering. They can't scale, and I think, frankly, we need to move from a world of fail fast to scale fast. The rubber hits the road at scale, and to do that, really, you need to consider what I describe as digital from every angle, and it's thinking of all of the barriers that stop that MVP, which was quick, easy to create, to test, to prototype, to get real user feedback into, and say, how do we scale this? That's tough, because that raises real fundamental questions to the existing mothership business, if you want.
Sure.
Does it cannibalize the existing business? Do we have the right amount of capital to put into it to fund it? Does it challenge our regulatory compliance obligations, the way we think about tax, legal obligations, people, culture, skills? So I guess I fully buy into the need and the necessity for ecosystems, but to me the challenge is not necessarily this kind of fast, agile innovation. That's a crucial first end of the statement. It's how do we get to drive real scale and industrialization?
As we talk about, I love the scale notion. So many of our TMT clients are disrupting other industries, as we've been talking about, but in many ways they're falling back on legacy type of decision making and thinking in terms of, we frequently get the request of, we want to say, let's predict where things are going to go. Let's do a 3 to 5 year forecast. All these things. By definition, those things, the accuracy there is going to be worse than ever in history because things are changing too fast. And so I think that's one of the things when you talk about, as you talked about, Carolyn, that so many of these clients have been disrupting themselves in TMT. You talked about how they've been on 10-year march towards really changing themselves into digital businesses, actually creating what we've called an adaptive digital enterprise. Not one that if we were off by 50% with the forecast 2 years out, we're out of business. More one that says we can actually scale or shut down faster than our competitors. We can plug into a new business partner faster than our competitors, or we can unplug from an unsuccessful supplier faster than anyone else. This notion of being able to adapt and surf to those consumer and customer demands that we never anticipated, that's what's going to be the winning equation, I think.
That's absolutely right. And in fact, that's a topic that we explore in our convergence labs. And the point that most companies keep kind of front and center every time when they look into these ecosystem plays is business models. And very often we say that collaboration is a new innovation because the other dimension here is that you don't have to do everything yourself. In fact, in an ecosystem environment, you shouldn't do everything yourself. You should really think about how you're going to partner with different industries, how you're going to partner with different types of technologies. And sometimes you'll be competing in one part of the business and collaborating in the other. And it's all very fluid and very agile. So it isn't a point-in-time decision. It is a direction. It is a flexibility that's built into the DNA of the organization. So it's the culture, it's the leadership, it's the technology, it's the business model. It's all of the above. And I think it's just going to keep on evolving and changing, and that's what makes it very exciting.
Well, I have to tell you, here at a place like Mobile World Congress, it's very easy to get very focused on the technology itself because there's so much of it and it's very exciting. But at the end of the day, you've done a very good job across this panel of reminding us that it's the human component that really matters. So how is it that we think about making sure that we bring together talent and technology in the right way so that it can really affect change in the way organizations operate?
I often distinguish between companies that are doing digital and companies that are being digital. And the fundamental difference, if you're doing digital, you're allocating your investment spend typically towards technology-centric pilots. You're digitizing the front end of yesterday's business. You're automating yesterday's business processes. That's dead. That is completely wasted investment. So how do you transition into a company that lives and breathes, that has digital infused in every aspect of the organization? You have to start there with your people. You have to. That's a cultural change first. That's not a technology change first. You're challenging people to break down the org chart, to reimagine a new way of working, to reimagine a new business model, a new operating model. That has to come from people. One of our panelists earlier was the CEO of Tech Mahindra. I thought he made some really brilliant comments.
Good, yeah.
He said strategy and culture come before technology. And he described the shadow board that he has made up of millennials, and he said that the access to ideas that these guys, that the shadow board brings the supervisory board is unbelievable. So he's trying to engage the entire organization in reinvention.
Right.
No one knows what the end game looks like. That as Greg said, that's impossible. So how can you inspire, motivate, drive a change in behavior to keep experimenting and keep scaling?
So, for those of us who work in this industry, we're at a tipping point. I mean, we're at a real tipping point. And, there's the old joke of, if you're in business, you call it a barrier or a challenge. If you're in consulting, you call it an opportunity. But it is kind of where we're at right now with the application of this technology. I think if we don't, and I'm not talking about directly your employees or just your customers, but when you talk about some of these things like, who wouldn't support autonomous vehicles? Who wouldn't support clean energy? Okay, who wouldn't support the idea of automating routine, boring tasks? Yeah, no rational person could not support that. But if you aren't also looking at who in the short term gets disenfranchised by those three very good business and societal goods, we have failed as participants in this industry. And I think we've got to come in with a more aggressive point of view. So if some of these technologies like AI or 5G are just used to build a cheaper company and not a better company that takes those people who are once doing something repetitive and helps them achieve something new, I personally believe that we're all believers in being purpose-led. If you take someone's purpose away from them with all these technologies and leave them a little bit adrift, we will fail with this. And I think we in this industry, both our clients and our partners and things like that, we've got to come in, not just apply it, but say for the other people who are affected by it, good or bad, what's our point of view on how we help them benefit as well, whether or not they're our direct customer?
I'd like to build on the human impact and take it one step further, which is some of the decisions that are going to be made in the next few years around industry collaboration and the types of products and services and the way we create experiences for customers. You know, the way we're going to live and move in cities, the way we're going to manage our home, the way we're going to manage our health, the way we're going to share our data, the concept of privacy. Some of these big questions are really going to shape what it means to be human in the future. And I think, you know, when these alliances are made, when these products are created, when these technologies get connected, we have an opportunity to solve problems that we could never solve before, and we've got an opportunity to, I think, redefine what it means to be human, and that's really exciting.
I don't know if you can get any bigger than redefining what it means to be human.
No, but what it means to live, what it means to do business, what it means to work, what it means to play. I think that these are big questions.
It's a great place to be.
Exactly.
So this has been a fantastic panel. I know we've sort of run out of time here. So before we wrap up, maybe what I'll do is just go down the line and see if there are any key takeaways or observations that you would make coming out of the last couple of days of Mobile World Congress. And Carolyn, maybe I'll start with you.
That's a hard one because there are just so many incredible technologies out there. I mean, frankly, it's hard to pick one. I think that the one that really got me thinking is this whole concept of smart appliances in the home, right? So you have smart fridges now that can basically order food for you and cook recipes based on your DNA, your health requirements. You've got smart mirrors that can help you monitor, you know, your house becomes a health dashboard. The environment around you, all these connected objects are looking after you. And there's this concept of an invisible concierge service, following you everywhere and just managing your shopping, your buying. All of this is becoming invisible. And I think what's great is everything we see on the floor today is going to be in the background, to your point, Greg, and we won't even notice it anymore. And it's just going to be transformative.
Lawrence?
I think from my side, what I've really taken away from Mobile World Congress, you can often come to these conferences and you see lots of kind of future state demos, art of the possible type demos. Sure. This time I've seen a bit more of a practical reality, actually, which I spent some time looking at some of the smart city demonstrations, the automotive companies, and I've seen some real practical, this is what we are actually doing. These are scenarios that are live, where we're using a drone to measure the stability of an oil and gas pipeline, for example, where we're using sensors to optimize traffic flow in a smart city. So to me, it's great to see a practical reality of things that are actually happening today. What that tells me is this you know, the shift in a way from the post-disrupted to the pre-disrupted industries. It's happening right now. So a challenge is how are we responding right now with the right level of ambition and purpose?
It's almost as if they're getting your message to move from fail fast to scale fast.
Yeah. Yeah.
Greg, how about you?
So it's interesting. More than any event that I can remember, maybe ever, but certainly in the last decade, not just Mobile World Congress, but CES, VivaTech, others, I've never felt more the sense of a call to action. I really feel like we're wandering with, you know, you're talking tens of thousands of square meters of technology on display, all kinds of people saying all the things it can do, but we've got a call to action about actually making something happen. And I think in particular, you know, we're in a world right now which comes across as very adversarial, and that is diminishing the ability to have impact, yes, on business, but more importantly on people's lives. And I think we've got to figure out, you know, even the media likes to emphasize the adversarial components, but if you listen to everybody here over the last 3 days, even those governmental agencies that at the top line sound different, their intents are absolutely aligned. And so we've got to figure out how to make this public-private, you know, interaction work best. It's not going to be the same in every country. But if we all agree that the outcome that we're looking for is the same, and then focus on the places where we actually have agreement as a starting point instead of the adversarial components, I think we can actually have a call to action that works here.
Fantastic. Well, Greg, that's a great note to end it on today. And with that, we'll sign off from Barcelona at the Mobile World Congress 2018.
Thank you.
Thanks.